Alright everyone, let's talk about something interesting. Let's talk about the astral realm, universes, and the void. Now, the astral realm is 3 times larger than the material universes. It has its own universes, it's not just one universe. And it's like a collection of universes that's, in sum total, even though it's constantly expanding, is on average 3 times bigger than the material universes. The material universes that we are in is one among many, many material universes, virtually infinite, but that's only if you were to count them, and then by the time you reach the end, there'd be another and another and another universe. That's the difference between virtually endless and actually endless. Now, if we're going to talk about the relationship between the material universes and the astral universes, we have to kind of use an analogy because these are really hard things to understand. Before I get into the analogy, though, it's a common misconception, in my own opinion. Now, all of these things are different pieces I've gathered from different spiritual traditions, different understandings, a little bit of science. But if you were to travel in this material universe, the one that we are in a single line, eventually you'd come back to yourself, where you started out. Now, I'm not saying how many trillions of years that would take, but when we look at space, we think that it just expands forever. It actually doesn't in material universes or astral universes. It's just very, very, very big. But the reason why you would come back to where you were originally is because we live more in like of a kind of a globe feeding into itself, like a Klein bottle, if you know what that is. And that's how, no matter where you start, if you go in a straight line, you'll end up where you were, because it's like this Klein bottle of space and time that, that workingly maintains the material universe that we're in. Now, let's go to the analogy. Now, for this analogy, I'd like you to imagine you're driving on the highway. Now, every single person is in a car. They have their own cars. But every single person is actually a universe. So all these universes are traveling along this highway in all these different cars, going in a singular direction, and that's something I'm going to get into in part 2 of this video. But for right now, we're not going to talk about the direction, but all going in the same direction, varying speeds. Sometimes universes crash, fold in onto themselves, and sometimes the survivors of that universe are able to go to another universe, but mostly a lot of the time, at least the lives of people, of things, and the stability of the universe is destroyed sometimes when a universe crashes. And of course, sometimes universes crash into each other. Sometimes cars going on this highway crash into each other. But usually, the material universes are fairly stable. And when I mean stable, I'm not saying that necessarily each one of them can hold life. I just mean that it's not this constant collision of universes. They all have their own sort of physics and gravity, in a sense, and the way time works and space works. But I believe every universe is kind of self-sustaining in a way that it can exist by its own rules. So you have all these universes traveling one direction. Now, let's compare a car that is a universe driving on this highway, and in one direction. We'll go over that in part 2. And then you have these party buses. There's these really big buses, really nice, and there's actually just as many of those as there are material universes. So the astral universes are these buses. They're bigger, they're much bigger, and their sum total at any given time always equals 3 times bigger than the material universes, which are the cars. Now, the part of the buses, these party buses, that is the vast majority of the bus is the positive side of the astral realm, where beings that are very orderly, that are very compassionate, very in sync with one another, and very non-conflictual. That's where, in all of these buses, that's where most of the beings in the astral universes exist. And sometimes in some of these buses, there's more of the other kind. And now the other kind of beings that exist in astral universes are, some call them demons, some call them jinn, some call them fallen angels, chaotic beings. There's a lot of names for them, but ones that have fallen below the station of a material universe because they were so chaotic in and of themselves they just couldn't exist in the material universe because their state of being cannot sustain itself in the material universes. For instance, the way that they get here a lot of the time and then go back is through viruses. Just consume, consume, consume with no real goal in sight, no real purpose to exist. It's just consumption. Now, in every single one of these buses, these astral universes, you have a bathroom in these buses, and these beings that we might call demons, we might call them, we might call them jinn, we might call them chaotic beings, what have you. You can pretty much get an equivalency in every spiritual tradition. These beings have locked themselves into the bathroom, and they can't get out. It's very unpleasant in the bathroom. It's very cramped, very small, and compared to the rest of the bus in these astral universes, it is tiny in the bathroom because all the beings are kind of shoved into these into these little porta potty type bathrooms in these party buses, and they're all fighting for their corner of the bathroom. They're all shoved in there, and they're fighting for their own corner because most of the time they're so disorderly that they can't even really make up a hierarchy. And the only hierarchy that exists in the demonics, or the smaller versions, the demonic sides of the astral realms, is might is right. Power rules all. And so the most powerful ones will be in a hierarchy because the other ones are afraid, and then the ones below them, those that are below the next layer, will be afraid of them. So it's all power and aggression dynamics in these little restrooms and all these party buses. So once again, just to try to make this clear, because I know this is a crazy analogy, you have a bunch of cars that are material universes, and then, like the one that we exist in, moving one direction. And then you also have party buses, equal amounts on the highway, traveling in one direction, and those are the astral universes. And then the beings that are so chaotic that they can't even exist on the material plane are trapped in the bathrooms. They've locked themselves in there, quite stupidly, in the party buses. So they're technically a part of the astral realm, but they're in very isolated parts of the astral realm, and they really can't get out because the gateways that keep them there in that restroom, the door is very, very well locked, and these gateways are very secure. And you have a number of traditions that talk about how these chaotic beings can break through the gate, but it hasn't really happened in a very long time. I'm not going to get into that. But, we're all traveling in one direction. So, now, there is, when I say universes, the space in these universes, whether it be material or astral, are the space inside the vehicles. So if the equivalency is kind of the air, pockets of air and space in kind of the cars, and then everything else, whether it be planets, suns, living beings, different gases and elements, those are the people. And then the air around them is the space in which they exist, but only in every single individual vehicle. So what is the thing that surrounds the cars and the buses? What is that is outside of the vehicles, outside of these universes, and surround them to where that separates them and even allows them to crash into each other sometimes when they traverse through it? Usually not through will. If there's whole universes that have an individual will, I'm not ready to contemplate that. But so what is that stuff that exists outside the vehicles? That is the void. Now, the void it doesn't have the same space and time qualities that the universes do, that are inside the vehicles. It is outside of existence in more of a way than even strange universes that exist. You could call them strange people, exist inside the cars or inside the party buses. It is beyond self-conception. It is beyond self. It is beyond measurement. Now, there are beings that are said to live in this void. I'm not convinced that they really live in the void. I think that they live in their own universes. But if something can travel freely through the void, which is, you think space is vast. This void between vehicles is beyond comprehension. But the reason why we don't have beings going from one universe constantly is because, like I said, the space around us inside the car feeds into itself. So even if I went to the back seat and then I went further back and then I just end up in the front seat again, if we're using the analogy. The void, it may work the same way, but just by the void's rules, but I'm not even convinced that the void has those kind of rules. It's mainly not traversable in the same way that getting from one galaxy to another in this universe is almost impossible, because you don't have a source of energy or anything to thrive on before you get to the next galaxy. You'd run out of everything that's propelling you or allowing you to live before you'd hit the next galaxy. So that's even more true between universes that are in this void, because the space is just astronomical is an understatement. What kind of scares me is that there's stories of beings that traverse this space. The void, not space, but the void. That's a scary thing to comprehend, because if a being can do that, that being is very powerful. And, I'm not even getting into the positive beings that might be able to do that, but I'm just thinking about the negative ones, that if a being is so powerful and and is focused on consumption and can travel through the void, that is terrifying. But there are also good beings, I think, that can do the same thing. But I also think that the causal realm, which isn't even a part of this whole dynamic that I'm talking about, has a big part to play in relation to the void. But in the next video, what I'm going to talk about, this is part 1. I still haven't decided what I'm going to name this video. I just decided to, start talking about this because I've been thinking about these concepts for quite a while, and then I started to really kind of understand the thoughts in relation to one another as I was driving down the highway today. And it all just kind of made sense. Now, this is my combination of ideas. These aren't my individual ideas. I didn't come up with all this, but this is my combination of ideas from many different ideas that I've learned from other sources. So in part 2 of whatever this video happens to be called, I'm going to talk about the direction that we're all headed to on the highway. It's more complicated than you think. It's not just God. It's more complicated. And I'll try to combine into the analogy the causal realm, or realms, I guess you could say, depending on they don't follow the same laws even the astral realms do. It makes even less sense. But I will be talking about that in part 2. Thank you very much for watching. This has been a strange video. I don't have a lot of bells and whistles for this video, but I'm going to be trying to add pictures, which of course you've seen if I'm adding them. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you think I'm full of crap, you think, oh wow, you have great ideas, just shoot down in the comment section below on YouTube. Greatly appreciate it. I'll try to respond to everybody. I always try to respond to every comment placed on YouTube. And don't forget to love each other, realize yourself, and have a great day.